Today, we're talking about something a lot of men secretly suspect but rarely say out loud. Why women often become more interested when you stop caring so much. It sounds harsh, even unfair, but after years of sitting across from couples in my therapy room, watching patterns repeat over and over, it's impossible to ignore. Welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you're here because this topic changes people. Men come in heartbroken, confused, asking why their effort, affection, and loyalty pushed someone away instead of pulling them closer. They tell me I gave her everything. I cared with my whole heart. That should have made her stay. And every time I have to gently say, caring isn't the problem, but losing yourself is. In therapy, you learn quickly that relationships are rarely destroyed by lack of love. They're destroyed by imbalance. One person becomes the pursuer, the pleaser, the fixer. The other becomes the chooser, the evaluator, the one with emotional control. When a man's entire emotional world revolves around a woman, she may feel adored, but she also feels something else: certainty. And certainty kills desire faster than rejection ever could. I've witnessed men completely transform their lives just by shifting their attention off the relationship and back onto themselves. When you stop waiting by the phone, when you stop over-explaining, over-giving, or over-rying, something changes, not just in her, in you. You become grounded, calm, and harder to emotionally shake. And women respond to that not because they're manipulative, but because emotional confidence is attractive in every human relationship. This video isn't about playing games or pretending you don't care. It's about understanding why your energy becomes more appealing when it isn't desperate or dependent. There is a psychology behind it, built on attachment, emotional regulation, and self-respect. So today, we're breaking down why stepping back often makes her step forward, and why valuing yourself changes everything. Certainty kills attraction. 1. Certainty kills attraction. When I first started practicing, I didn't understand this concept the way I do now. Men would sit across from me devastated, convinced that love should be simple. If you care deeply, show it openly, and devote yourself completely, the relationship should only grow stronger. But over the years, something very unexpected kept appearing in session after session. The men who loved the hardest often suffered the most. Not because love was wrong, but because the moment a woman became completely certain of his feelings, something inside her shifted. I remember working with a man who cared so deeply for his partner that his entire identity started to orbit around her moods, her texts, her approval. He waited for her messages like his oxygen depended on it. When she pulled away, he tried harder. When she seemed distant, he apologized, even when he hadn't done anything wrong. He believed love was proven through constant reassurance. But the more certain she became that he would never leave, never challenge her, never walk away, the less she respected him. She didn't dislike him. She simply felt nothing to lose. There was no mystery, no tension, no excitement. What I want men to understand is this: attraction survives on the edge of unpredictability, not in a chaotic or unhealthy way, but in a natural human way. We are drawn to what we can't completely control. When a woman knows exactly what your next move is, exactly how much you care, exactly how available you'll be, the relationship stops feeling alive. There is no discovery left. She doesn't have to work for your heart because it's already guaranteed. When a man steps back emotionally, not out of manipulation, but because he remembers he has a life beyond the relationship, something changes. She begins to see him again, not as an accessory to her confidence, but as a person she could lose, and loss awakens interest. Distance makes emotions real. I've watched women suddenly fight for relationships they once took for granted the moment a man stops centering his world around them. Certainty kills attraction because it removes effort. When both people know they matter, when both participate, when she feels she could lose something valuable, the relationship becomes balanced again. And that balance restores desire. Attention creates pressure. 2. Attention creates pressure. In therapy, men often assume attention is always a gift. They believe the more they show affection, availability, and emotional presence, the stronger the bond should be. But something I've witnessed repeatedly, and often painfully, is that too much attention can have the opposite effect. Not because women dislike being cared for, but because overwhelming attention turns affection into pressure, and pressure suffocates attraction. I once worked with a couple where the man believed he needed to constantly check in, texting every hour, asking if she was okay, wondering if she needed anything, tracking subtle changes in her tone, always monitoring her emotional temperature. He thought attentiveness meant love, but from her side of the couch, she described it differently. She said it felt like she couldn't breathe, like every move she made was being watched, interpreted, analysed. She didn't feel cared for. She felt responsible for his emotional stability. Men don't often see that when a woman senses you need her more than she naturally wants to give, she starts feeling trapped. Your attention becomes a reminder that she can hurt you easily, disappoint you easily, or reject you easily. That responsibility weighs on her, and instead of feeling closer to you, she pulls away. Sometimes gently, sometimes suddenly. When I explain this to men, many are stunned. They think, but I thought effort shows I care. And yes, balanced effort is healthy, but attention without boundaries sounds like my happiness depends on how you respond to me. No person, man, or woman wants to carry someone else's entire emotional world. When your attention becomes constant, predictable, and consuming, she loses the space to desire you on her own. I've watched powerful shifts happen when men redirect that attention back to their lives, when they start valuing their time, friends, goals, hobbies, and peace. Instead of asking, why hasn't she texted? They are living. And something fascinating occurs. The moment that emotional pressure lifts, she feels free again. Free to miss you. Free to wonder what you're doing. Free to reach out. Women don't pull away because they don't care. They pull away because too much attention leaves them no room to feel desire organically. And when desire dies, the connection fades with it. The healthiest relationships aren't built on constant attention. They're built on balanced space. Two people living full lives choosing each other, not clinging to each other. When your attention becomes a gift instead of a demand, she feels safe, not smothered. And safety, not pressure, is where attraction grows. Confidence comes from detachment. 3. Confidence comes from detachment. There's a moment I've seen happen with so many men in therapy, and it's powerful. They come into the room anxious, overthinking every message, every silence, every shift in her tone. Their confidence is tied to whether she's responding, whether she's happy, whether she's choosing them that day. And the truth I've had to tell many of them gently but directly is this: you can't be confident if you're emotionally dependent. Confidence isn't loud, it isn't aggressive, and it isn't something you fake. It comes from detachment. Not coldness, not cruelty, but emotional independence. It's the ability to say, I want you in my life, but I don't need you to validate my worth. There was a man I once worked with who measured his self-esteem through his girlfriend's reactions. If she seemed distant, he felt like a failure. If she praised him, he felt alive. His emotional world rose and fell based on her approval, and because of that, she had all the power without even asking for it. When his mood depended on hers, she stopped seeing him as a partner and started seeing him as someone she had to manage. But everything changed the moment he stopped making her his emotional anchor and started becoming his own. He didn't cut her off. He didn't play games. He just reconnected with himself. He went back to his hobbies, saw his friends, set personal goals. He became a man who wasn't waiting for love to make his life meaningful. His life was meaningful already. And do you know what happened? She started chasing him again. This is where men misunderstand detachment. They think it means acting distant, ignoring her, or pretending not to care. That's not confidence. That's insecurity with a mask on. Real detachment is internal. It's calm. It's the quiet belief that no matter what happens, you will still be okay. Women are drawn to that kind of energy, the kind that feels steady, secure, grounded, when you no longer panic over silence, when you stop trying to decode every word, when you trust that you're enough. She feels something she may not have felt in a long time. Respect. Truthfully, I've watched women fall back in love with men they were already halfway out the door from. Not because the men begged, pleaded, or fought for attention, but because they stopped needing permission to value themselves. Your confidence is never built by holding on to someone. It's built by knowing you won't lose yourself if they leave. Detachment is not the absence of love. It's the presence of self-worth. And once a man has that, he becomes someone she wants, not someone she has to save. You become the prize. When you stop chasing for, you become the prize. When you stop chasing. In therapy, I once worked with a man whose entire relationship was built on pursuit. He was a good partner, kind, loyal, thoughtful, yet he always felt he was competing for her attention. She decided when they spent time together. She decided when she was emotionally open. She decided when she wanted distance. And every time she pulled away, he ran harder. He sent thoughtful messages every morning, planned dates, rearranged his schedule, and constantly tried to prove his value. And from his perspective, that was love. But from hers, something different was happening. The more he chased, the less she respected his effort. The relationship flipped into an imbalance. She was the prize and he was the pursuer. She didn't try to impress him. She didn't invest with the same energy because she never felt like she could lose him. One day, he told me something that shifted everything. I realized she never worried about keeping me. She only worried about how much I was trying to keep her. Many men don't understand how deeply that dynamic affects attraction when you are the one always seeking validation, affection, and attention. You give away your value. You teach her that you will always be available, always forgiving, always waiting, not because she earned that devotion, but because you placed her above yourself. Over time, that man changed one thing. He stopped chasing. Not in a cold or angry way, but in a calm, self-respecting way. He filled his schedule again. He reconnected with friends. He slept peacefully instead of checking his phone at midnight waiting for a reply. He showed love, but he no longer begged for it. His energy became confident, not desperate, and the transformation was immediate. She started texting first. She initiated plans. She dressed up for him the way she used to in the beginning. She asked where he was, who he was with, why he seemed less available. The attraction came back not because he played games, but because the relationship balance returned. You become the prize when your life is full. When your happiness doesn't depend on her attention, when you know your value with or without her approval. Women are drawn to men who choose themselves, who remain loving yet independent. who offer affection, not obsession. When you stop chasing, she finally has space to pursue you. Not because she's manipulative, but because desire only grows when there's something real to lose. Space makes her curious 5. Space makes her curious. When a woman starts to pull away, most men respond with the exact behaviour that pushes her even further. They try harder, they send more messages, ask more questions, and attempt to solve a problem she hasn't even explained. In their minds, reaching out means they care. In her mind, it feels like pressure. That pressure doesn't bring her closer, it suffocates her. I've seen men panic at the first sign of distance. They assume silence means danger, so they rush to fix it. One man told me he texted constantly because he didn't want her to feel abandoned. What he didn't realise was that every message he sent reminded her that he was waiting, worrying, and depending on her response to feel secure. It became emotional weight she never asked to carry. When a woman feels overwhelmed, she doesn't experience your attention as love. She experiences it as responsibility. And responsibility kills attraction. It makes her feel like she has to manage your emotions instead of exploring her own. That's why pressing harder never works. The more you demand closeness, the more she needs distance. The shift happens when a man finally understands that space is not the enemy. Space gives her room to sort out her feelings without pressure. It gives her time to miss your presence. It allows her to feel curiosity again. When you send message after message, there's nothing to wonder about. But when you stay calm, grounded, and respectful of her distance, something changes. She begins to notice the silence, not because she feels guilty, but because she finally has the mental freedom to feel desire again. I've watched women who swore they were losing interest suddenly reach out when the man stopped trying to force connection. He didn't slam the door or punish her. He simply stepped back, allowed life to continue, and trusted himself more than he feared losing her. In that space, she found clarity. She remembered his value. She realized his presence wasn't guaranteed. When a man can calmly say through his actions, "Take your time, I'll be okay," he becomes more attractive, not less. His composure shows maturity. His silence shows confidence. His patience shows self-respect. Women do not run from space, they run from pressure. And when pressure disappears, curiosity returns. She starts to wonder what you're doing, how you're feeling, and why you're not chasing anymore. That's when she moves toward you willingly, not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire. Space doesn't break connection, it gives it oxygen. Self-respect is more attractive than devotion. 6. Self-respect is more attractive than devotion. One of the hardest truths I've had to help men understand in therapy is this. A woman won't respect you simply because you love her deeply. Devotion alone doesn't earn value. In fact, when devotion comes at the cost of your self-respect, it does the opposite. It makes you easy to overlook. I once worked with a man who had no trouble loving a woman. In fact, he loved too much too soon and too blindly. When she cancelled plans at the last minute, he forgave it. When she spoke harshly out of frustration, he rationalized it. When she pulled away for days, he still waited by the phone. He told me, "I just want her to see that I'm loyal. I want to prove I'm not like other men." But what he didn't realize was painful. The more he bent himself to earn her approval, the less she valued his presence. Women don't lose interest in kind men. They lose interest in men who cannot protect their own dignity. Self-respect isn't loud, aggressive, or confrontational. It's silent strength. It's holding your ground without raising your voice. It's knowing you deserve the same effort you give. It's the quiet confidence to say no when something doesn't feel right. When a woman senses a man has self-respect, her behaviour changes. She speaks more carefully. She considers his feelings. She tries harder to show up, not because she fears him, but because she respects him. And respect is the foundation of attraction. In session. I've seen women cry over losing a man who refused to lose himself for love. They weren't mourning a breakup. They were mourning the loss of a man who carried himself with value. They knew he would not tolerate being treated like an option. They knew his love was strong, but his standards were stronger. If a woman knows she can walk over your boundaries without consequence, she stops seeing you as a partner and starts seeing you as someone she controls. And control kills connection. So, what does self-respect sound like? Not anger, not threats, not silence, but calm, steady boundaries. I care about you, but I won't stay in a relationship where I feel ignored. I want this to work, but my feelings matter too. If you need space, I'll give it, but I won't chase you. These words don't punish her. They honour yourself. Self-respect is magnetic because it tells her something powerful. You choose her, but you also choose yourself. A man who loves a woman without losing himself becomes the kind of man she fights to keep. She notices. When your world isn't just her 7, she notices. When your world isn't just her, one of the most fascinating patterns I've seen in therapy is how women respond when a man finally starts living his own life again. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but simply because he remembers he is a whole person with dreams, friends, goals, and a purpose beyond the relationship. When your world becomes bigger than one woman, something changes slowly at first, then all at once. I once worked with a couple where the man had stopped living for himself. Before the relationship, he was social, motivated, ambitious. He had hobbies, routines, a career he cared about. But when she became his focus, everything else faded. His friends only saw him when she was unavailable. His gym membership collected dust. His dreams were paused until things got better. She didn't ask him to do that. He gave up his world voluntarily, and instead of feeling honoured by his devotion, she felt pressured by it. She told me in session, "I feel like I'm his whole life." It's flattering, but it scares me. I don't want to be responsible for his happiness. That sentence stuck with me, B.